Hi everyone and welcome to this tutorial. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build resource clusters. So I'm in the project workbench in a project where I've already created a few resources. So as previously explained, resources form the basic building blocks of any cost estimate in Lula Build. So all costs and processes in a construction project can be modeled by assembling these resources together into various combinations. So Lula Build provides the tooling to create these reusable resource units or so-called resource clusters. So as an example, let's say we require mortar in our project. We can combine building sand, building water and cement into a resource cluster, which we can then reuse wherever we need mortar in this project. Right, so I'm going to switch over to the resources cluster scene to show you how this is done. So as you can see, I haven't created any clusters yet. So I'm going to click on the plus create button. That thing creates a cluster and it launches the cluster editor. So in the cluster editor, you've got your cluster explorer on the left, where you can see the internals of the cluster, which is currently empty. You've got a calculation sheet in the middle, where we will specify the mixture of our mortar. And then we've got a few action tabs here on the side where you can edit the info of the cluster or insert some resources and so forth. Right, so I'm going to start off by editing the info of this cluster. So a cluster has a code and a name, and both of these need to be unique within the cluster list. So similar to resources, the code is simply some identifier for the cluster. So I'm just going to leave it as C1 for now. And the name, I'm going to call this mortar. And the unit, let's say we want to calculate how much a cubic meter of mortar is going to cost us. Right. So now I need to pull in the resources that I need to mix mortar on site. So I'm going to open up my insert tab. And here I've got full access to my resource list. So I can search for items. So let's say I want to search for cement. I can search for it, and to insert this resource into the worksheet, I can simply double click on it and it'll appear in my calculation sheet. Alright, alternatively, you can select the resources that you want to insert and make use of the insert selected button, and it'll also import those resources into your calc sheet. Okay, so as mentioned, we want to calculate the cost of mortar per cubic meter. But the individual resources aren't all priced per cubic meters. You've got a pocket of cement, you've got a cube of building sand, but you don't necessarily use 1 cube of building sand per cube of mortar. And the building mortar is priced per kiloliter. So we've got to transform these allowables and units to match the unit of the parent cluster. So Lula Build provides you with a transform column where you can fill in formulas that will transform these allowables and units. So if you double click on the cell, it goes into editing mode, and I can now enter any valid mathematical formula here to transform that allowable. So let's say we need 6 pockets of cement per cube of mortar. And let's assume we're going to waste about 5% of that cement when we do mix the mortar. So I'm going to multiply it with 1.05 waste. Right, so let's just have a look at what's going on inside of this formula. So I've multiplied it by the number of bags that I need, 6. And in square brackets, I've added pocket per cube. So in Lula Build, in our equation compiler, everything inside of square brackets is essentially ignored by our equation compiler. So it's basically just a comment for you, the estimator, to understand what your calculations meant. Or when your site agents look at this, they understand the meaning of your calculations. All right. So building sand, let's say we need about 0.85 cubes of building sand for every cube of mortar that we mix. And let's say we also waste about 5% of our sand when we do mix the mortar. So I'm going to multiply it with 0.85 cubes per cube. So, and then multiply it with 1.05 waste. Okay. So now we can see that it costs us 75 Rand for the building sand when we mix 1 cube of mortar. Alright, the building water is in kiloliters. So we need to transform it from kiloliters to liters, and then we need to specify how many liters of building water goes into 1 cube of mortar. All right, so there is 1,000 liters. So I'm going to divide this by 1,000 liters per kiloliter. And then I'm going to multiply it by, let's say we need 60 liters of water per cube. All right, so the building water costs us 24 cents per cube of mortar. And now we can see in total that it's going to cost us 592 Rand and 70 cents to mix 1 cube of mortar, which consists of these 3 materials. Okay, so you can use clusters to build any type of team in Lula Build. So it's not just specifically material mixtures. You can create labor teams, or you can create a plant team that might consist of a machine, some fuel, and an operator. And you can also create teams within teams. So in my insert tab here, I inserted resources, but you've also got the option to insert other clusters, which I don't have at the moment, but you can pull in other clusters inside of this mortar cluster. So you can layer your clusters in terms of complexity and really model any type of team or mixture that you need on site. Right, and these clusters together with resources will then be used to price your build items, which I'll show you in a follow-up video. Thanks for joining.